You don't know the power of the dark side.
Hey, a bit Steve from Old Yorkshire Geek, and happy Revenge of the 5th. Doesn't really sound as good, does it? But never mind. A bit of Star Wars news. As might be expected, Kathleen Kennedy is looking to James Bond for how to eventize Star Wars movies, exclusive from Empire. So let's have a look at that. Here we go. So there it is. Kathleen Kennedy is looking to James Bond for how to eventize Star Wars movies, exclusive. And over here, there she is. There she is. Right, by Ben Travis. Right, as Star Wars Day, aka May the 4th, comes around in 2023, it's now around 3.5 years since a new Star Wars movie graced the big screen. When Episode 9, The Rise of Palpatine, hit cinemas at the end of 2019, it marked not only the end of the Skywalker saga, but also a hiatus for the movie side of Star Wars storytelling. The focus moved to hit streaming series like The Mandalorian and Andor on Disney+, not even mentioning Obi-Wan or Boba Fett. And the birth of the High Republic era in a series of novels and comics that probably sell, a handful of copies compared to, other stuff. In my opinion, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. But plans are afoot for the galaxy's glorious return to cinemas. Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy recently confirmed plans for 3 new films at Star Wars Celebration, with the Force ready to awaken on the big screen once more. See what they did there. Now it's a question of when those 3 upcoming movies are expected to arrive, and as Kennedy tells Empire, that's simply a case of when they're ready. Right, here we go. I've often brought up Bond, Kennedy tells us at Star Wars Celebration. That's every 3 or 4 years, and there wasn't this pressure to feel like you had to have a movie every year. I feel that was very important to Star Wars. We have to eventize this. The simple answer is nothing is likely to hit the multiplexes until at least 2025. It's much better to tell the truth, she says. That we're going to make these movies when they're ready to be made and release them when they're ready to be released. It's not what they were saying in 2015, was it? When they released Force Awakens, and then a year later Rogue One, then a year later Last Jedi, then a year later whatever came next, I can't remember. Solo, and then a year later Rise of Palpatine. Tell you. And by the way, what's all this looking to Bond for? Every 3 to 4 years. Don't you remember a fella called George Lucas released his Star Wars films every 3 years? Didn't he? When he did his 2 trilogies that were released 3 years apart. Why do you mention that? Because she hates him. She hates George Lucas, and I don't know why. And I don't know why he put her in charge. But a hostile takeover. I'm starting to think it was a hostile takeover and he had no choice but to put Kathleen Kennedy in charge, or she'd spill the beans on whatever, and she opened the door for Disney to come in and buy it all up, and probably made a lot of money in the process, allegedly, maybe. Anyway, as for what those films are about, they're set across a wide span of the Star Wars timeline. James Mangold is directing a film about the first Jedi and the discovery of the Force, set 25,000 years before the Skywalker saga. But I bet you can't tell. I bet they're still flying around in spaceships and using hyperspace and lightsabers and all that, and blasters and all that stuff. I bet they are. I bet you can't really tell the difference. I bet it's not like, Roman times or something like that, or Atlantis, or ancient Greece or whatever. I bet it's not. I bet you can't hardly tell the difference. Dave Filoni will continue the Mandoverse era in a big screen event, and Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy will bring back Daisy Ridley as Rey in a film set 15 years before the end of Episode 9. I bet most of these won't happen. I think the Mandoverse film will happen, but I bet the others, especially with this writer's strike going on, they could be delayed anyway. It's all about looking into the wider lore and legacy of the Jedi belief system. What we're exploring is the evolution of the Jedi, Kennedy confirms. We're going very far back, we're looking at the present, and now we're moving 15 years after the rise of Palpatine. The First Order has fallen. The Jedi are in chaos. First Order didn't have a chance to rise, did it? The Jedi are in chaos. Well, there aren't any Jedi. There's even a question of how many exist anymore. Well, if you believe Ryan Bleeding Johnson, why's he got my last name? It's embarrassing. They're everywhere, the Jedi. Little boys, slave boys have got it. Well, which we know they did have in Phantom Bleeding Menace. Anyway. And Rey's building the new... Getting angry. And Rey's building the new Jedi Order based on the text that she was given and that Luke imparted on her. The Force will be felt for many years to come. And then it goes on about the next issue of Empire magazine, which, in good, whatever stores, supermarkets and news agents and all that stuff. But there you go. But she's talking out of her arse, isn't she? I've often brought up Bond. There it says there, look. I've often brought up Bond. Kennedy tells us at Star Wars Celebration, which was a while ago now, wasn't it? That's every 3 or 4 years, and there wasn't this pressure to feel like you had to have a movie every year. I feel that was very important to Star Wars. We have to eventise this. They weren't thinking that, as I said, when they brought Force Awakens out and Rogue One, a movie every year for 4 years, wasn't it? They weren't thinking that then, were they? Because they were trying to make as much money as they could as quickly as they can. Then they wanted to package it and process it and put it on a plastic lunchbox and sell it. They want to sell it, don't they? that's a very bad impersonation of Jeff Goldblum there. But that's what was happening. I'm having a drink of bleeding coffee. It's nearly cold. I want you to chuff in med. But yeah, she brings up Bond. Why don't she bring up the original trilogy? Why don't she bring up the prequel trilogy? What George Lucas did. A film every 3 years, released when they were ready. Sometimes only just ready. But anyway, I hate the woman. I do. I'm sorry. I often don't say this. I don't hate anybody really. I don't hate Kathleen Kennedy, but I'm very close. She's really, really annoying, and I wish she'd keep her nose out and stop saying things. Just keep signing checks. Get somebody in that knows what they're doing. Stop pushing the people that know what they're doing out, such as Jon Favreau. I mean, he's not, when I say know what they're doing, he's not the biggest, he says he's a big Star Wars fan, but he's not really into all the lore. Yes, he's a Star Wars fan, as in, probably in the same way that I'm a Star Wars fan. I don't know all the lore and everything going back and all the books and everything. But he knows what he likes and he's got reverence for the source material. That's what I'm trying to say. But no, she won't do that. She won't do that. She's putting her own people in again. We thought there were a time, wasn't there, where there were rumours of the Civil War at Lucasfilm, but that seems to have ended, and it looks like Kathy's won, doesn't it? Even if there was one, but I'm waffling now because this has made me angry. But yeah, I brought up Bond. Often brought up Bond. No, she hasn't. No, she hasn't often brought up Bond. Why has she brought up Bond? By the way, don't you remember the time when there were Bond films coming out every couple of years, weren't there? Every year. Once upon a time, 1962 was Dr. No. I think 1963 was From Russia with Love. 1964 were Goldfinger. 1965 were Thunderball. Then we had a break. 1967 were You Only Live Twice. So I'm a bit of a Bond fan. Have you noticed? And then there were and then 1969. So another 2 years. So like I said, only recently there's been big, massive gaps because Bond films have become huge movies, haven't they? There weren't huge movies back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, and even the 80s. Really, there were big movies, big releases, but they weren't like $200 million films. And I think even if you adjusted for inflation, for the budgets of the films, it still wouldn't be that much. I don't think. But like I said, they were brought every 1 to 2 years, right up until the Pierce Brosnan era, really. But anyway, so she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's just talking about modern Bond, Daniel Craig Bond. I mean, he's been the longest serving Bond, hasn't he? Only because there was so long in between his movies. Anyway, I still want to know what's going to happen with Bond. People want to know how they're going to move forward. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Right, we'll leave it there. So, thanks for watching. Wherever you are, look after each other. And until next time, I'll see thee.